Welcome into episode 137 of The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. I'm Ken Ray.
And I'm August Trometer.
$20 and a security breach on Pump 4, a U.S. city under cyber siege, and keeping the kids off the dating apps. Ripped from the pages of a William Gibson novel, this is The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. If you're like me, you don't think much about the systems that run gas stations. The most thought I might give it is checking out the place on the pump where you put your card to make sure there's no easily identifiable card skimmer attached, and wondering how long those hot dogs have actually been there. Well, it turns out there are sort of one-stop systems for running gas stations. Take, for example, the Orpak Cytomat. According to a piece from TechCrunch, Orpak's Cytomat systems monitor the amount of fuel stored in the gas station's tanks, as well as their temperature and pressure. The software also sets the price for the gas and processes card payments. Everything but filling the slushy machine. And of course, if we're talking about them here, it's not good news. Quoting TechCrunch, Homeland Security's cybersecurity agency says a popular gas station software contains several security vulnerabilities that require low skill to exploit. The advisory, posted by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, gave the Orpak Cytomat software a rare vulnerability severity rating of 9.8 out of 10. According to the advisory, the piece goes on to say the software contained a hard-coded password set by the manufacturer, which, if used, would grant unfettered access to the system. I think I know just from those words, but would you please tell me what is a hard-coded password?
Sure. If you've ever watched movies and they talk about like a back door, that's sort of what a hard-coded password is. It's a password that's written into the system. It's part of the software and you literally cannot change it. And so if you give it out to people, those people have that password and they can do exactly what you can do with it. In this case, it basically gives you the keys to the entire device.
Okay. Why would somebody put one of these in?
Laziness, costs, simple efficiency. I mean, imagine you're a firm that's been doing this for 20 odd years, and you've got all these technicians that have to install these things, and you don't want to have to do password management, so you just hard code a password. That could be one thing. I worked at a company where they did something like that. They had a master password which they shared with everyone who worked at the company. And it gave everyone total access to any client's data, whether they needed it or not. And they didn't do it for evil purposes. It was just naive. Fortunately, as soon as I saw that, I yanked it so that they couldn't do that anymore. And they were very angry with me for about 3 days before they realized it was probably better that way.
Yeah, here's the thing. That only works if you're going to kill every employee who tries to leave. Because right. They're going to have access to your information from then on. And I know even if you leave on good terms, things change, attitudes change. Hey, that guy who used to work there has suddenly hit hard times. Maybe $5,000 would get me into their system.
Right.
Oh, man alive. As for what sort of harm the miscreants could do, it's like August said, you're handing the keys to all of it. You're basically tossing them the keys on your way out of the gas station. TechCrunch says an attacker could gain access to the system's configuration, including payment information, or shut down the system altogether, preventing customers from buying gas. Worse, the bugs are remotely exploitable, putting any internet-connected Cytomat device at risk. Now, I gotta say, I was surprised to find that most of the Cytomat systems were apparently not internet-connected, or if they are, they're not super easy to find. The piece says a cursory search of Shodan, a search engine for publicly available devices and databases, revealed more than 570 Orpak systems are connected to the internet out of more than 35,000 service stations across 60 countries. The largest number of the exposed systems, 205, are located here in the great old US of A. Now, I have to say, if internet connection is an option, I am sort of surprised that everybody hasn't gone for it.
Well, keep in mind that most gas stations are independently owned. Mm-hmm. The oil companies just say, here's your tanker of fuel, don't waste it. So it's up to the owner to run the station and do all the right things to run the business. And then some company like ORPAC comes along and says, we can save you money, and the station owner jumps at it. But fortunately, because these are just largely franchises, they really don't need the internet connectivity. And if it's an option, that means it costs more, and they're already trying to save money, so they probably don't get the option.
Now, this isn't really a story about which, listeners can do much of anything, but I wanted to hit it today because it gave me and hopefully other people a chance to learn a few things, like what's a hard-coded password and why would anybody use them. Then there's this sentence: the software also has several other flaws that can be remotely exploited, including code injection and buffer overflow vulnerabilities. These are terms that we hear a lot, and I think we all sort of have an idea of what they are, but as long as they're here, I wanted to hit them again. When we say code injection, we mean?
Code injection is where you insert some code into a device or a program. And if you do it right, no one will ever find out. And your newly inserted code can do all sorts of nasty things. Imagine in this case, if somebody wrote code so that all the pumps shaved a few cents off of every sale for themselves. I mean, it would take a lot of digging to even notice it. And then you'd have to try and figure out how to get it off your pumps.
That's interesting, because I was thinking you could insert code that would just, steal credit card information, and that's fine, but that's easily traceable. Whereas you could pull a Richard Pryor from Superman 3 and just, a penny a throw, but over the course of a day, a week, a month, then you're eventually talking about real money.
Yep.
Buffer overflow vulnerabilities. Again, I think I know what those are, but can you remind us, please?
Well, a buffer overflow is one of the techniques used to do code injection. Buffers are where devices temporarily store data. Now, think of your backyard like the memory of a device. And let's say a weed gets in an unlandscaped area, and we'll call that the buffer. No big deal. It's a weed. You go pull it. But let's say you woke up and the buffer had so many weeds in it that the weeds had nowhere to go, and they spread into the landscaped area of your backyard or memory. And you just lost the battle against the weeds. And it's all because of buffer overflow. On a device, those weeds can be malicious code that gets run when certain areas of memory are accessed.
It almost feels like you're talking about a local DDoS attack or something, or a dedicated denial of service attack. It's trying to do so many things that in trying to take care of all those things, even if you've got some sort of defense, even if you're trying to take care of all those things, something might get through. Am I understanding that correctly, or do I need to go back and listen again? No, that's kind of accurate. We used to have a problem in a lot of different browsers with buffer overflow. Mm-hmm. You'd click on a malicious link, and that link would just load up your browser with so much data that it could actually insert code and run it. TechCrunch says the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has said that the bugs have been fixed in a new software version, but customers have to request the update from ORPAC directly. Whether they're reaching out to affected system users is unclear. ORPAC's parent company declined to comment for the TechCrunch piece. As we record this, and things may have changed by the time you hear it, especially if you hear it like a year or two from now, but as we record this, Baltimore, Maryland is a city being held for ransom. Not like Bane and Gotham, but, well, we don't actually know to what extent. On Tuesday, the Capital Gazette out of Baltimore said Baltimore city government computers were infected with ransomware Tuesday, the mayor's office said, shutting down many technology systems while officials work to battle the attack. It's been a while since we talked on this show about these, but can you remind people what ransomware is and what it does?
Sure. Ransomware is just a form of malware. So it could be a virus or it could be software installed directly. Once the software is on the system, it shuts everything down until the victim coughs up some dough. Then the bad guy turns the system back on. If the bad guy is decent, I guess.
correct me if I'm wrong, oftentimes it's not that they've actually shut down the system, they've just shut down access. They basically like put a shell of encryption around stuff, and they're like, hey, you want that information that I've locked up? I'll give you a key, like that kind of thing, right?
It could be that. It could be just shutting the whole thing down. Mm-hmm. It could be shutting down certain things that are critical for the operating of a business, but maybe not critical for keeping patients alive, say in a hospital, because they don't want to get tapped for murder either.
A spokesman for the mayor's office stressed that critical systems, including 911 and 311, had not been affected, but the majority of city servers had been shut down. Now, if you're wondering who's behind it, you're not the only one. If you're wondering what they want, money, it turns out. The initial report didn't have anything about exactly how much they wanted, but they want what some would probably consider a laughably small amount, but we'll get to that in a bit. The mayor's spokesman said Wednesday that officials have to balance transparency with guarding against sharing information that could reveal to hackers what systems are vulnerable to attack, which is why they're not saying so much about, like what's been affected. One assumes he means hackers besides the ones who pwn their systems, because those hackers know what's susceptible, correct?
Right. And keep in mind, they could easily share that information, making Baltimore a regular target for hackers around the world until they get things in order.
Does that security reason wash with you? I mean, when you hear that, do you say that makes sense from a security side or that makes sense from a public relations side? Because right now, you got people in Baltimore. I mean, if somebody was like trying to, I don't know, I'm going to make something up because they haven't said what systems are affected, but somebody's trying to pay a water bill and they can't unless they go down to the office and write a check and do that. So that is a thing that people know is affected. I mean, should there be more transparency to let people know how not serious it is? Or does the fact that they stand up there and go, everything's fine, does that wash for you from a security standpoint?
I think the statement was probably written by the CTO, then revised by the PR team to make it understandable, and then rewritten by lawyers to basically cover their butts, which watered it down to nothing. That said, if the city is working with law enforcement, and I'm sure that they are, they want to stay as tight-lipped as possible so they can make sure to catch these guys.
So on Tuesday, City Councilman Ryan Dorsey said at least some City Hall staff were told to disconnect computers and other devices from the internet. Everybody has been instructed to unplug the Ethernet cable and turn off power to their computers, printers, and such, Dorsey said. It's apparently spreading computer to computer. The mayor's spokesman said that turning off and disconnecting was not the official guidance from the city's IT office, which was instructing people simply to leave their computers in whatever state they found them. Now, to me, when I read the unplugging thing, it sounded silly. Like when I asked you last week whether pulling an infected pirate video device off your network would make your network safe again, the answer is no. And I sort of assume that the damage in this case was done, whether computers were connected or disconnected. But then I read just enough about the ransomware in question to make me wonder, whether anything I knew was actually true. The city has confirmed that the ransomware in question is one called Robinhood. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. And first, unplugging would help if that computer hadn't been affected. It would also disconnect any virus-carrying computers that had been infected, preventing them from infecting other computers. So it's a good technique, but if your whole network is already toast, then unplugging doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, you're going to have to cut the wire at the mainframe. Sorry. And other 1980s jargon. 1990s jargon.
And let me point out, we're talking about Robinhood spelled with two B's, not the investment company or last year's awful Taron Egerton film.
Okay, so it's Robin is what you're saying, like ROBBIN apostrophe. It's like Robin people. Okay, yeah. I get it.
According to Bleeping Computer, security researcher Vitaly Kremez reverse engineered this Robinhood, and he found that when it runs, it shuts down 181 different Windows services, things such as antivirus software, mail servers, database, encryption, the non-important stuff.
Right.
I'm a Mac guy, so a lot of the technical Windows things that Robinhood does is a little fuzzy to me. But basically, the virus issues a command that shuts all of these down. Then it disconnects the network shares, which then prevents all those shared files it prevents them from being unencrypted and locks up all of the files.
On Wednesday, by the way, Baltimore Mayor Jack Young said, "I don't care what kind of systems you put in place, they always can find a way to infect your system." I hate how defeatist that sounds. I'm curious, do we know how such ransomware might end up on a system? I mean, one of the Capital Gazette pieces that I read said it's not the kind of thing that's usually spread through spam. So, I mean, how might this have happened?
It's really hard to know for sure. I'm sure they're investigating, trying to figure that out. But with something like this, you only need access to one computer. And so maybe they installed the software directly, and then the network transmitted it around. Maybe they use social engineering to get access, to get somebody's password. Or it could have been an employee who was doing improper things on his work computer. This is a true story. I was once contracted to help with IT services for a county courthouse in Indiana. They'd fired their head of IT, and when we looked at their system, he had been storing over 40 gigabytes of porn on the courthouse servers, right along with all of the court cases and verdicts. It was crazy.
Now, was he ripping that from DVDs, or was he possibly going to unsavory sites and downloading files completely unconscious of what else might be tied to those files?
I'll never know. I just hit delete.
All right, fair enough. Here's a question with Baltimore, and I know there's a lot that we don't know, but would this have been a job for our old friends, Best Practices?
Best practices. Wouldn't it be nice if everyone used those?
Well, the Capital Gazette seems to think so, August. One of the founders of a Maryland cybersecurity company said Tuesday that one of the best defensive measures an organization can take is to regularly update computers' operating systems. The city's IT director declined to say how often software patches are installed on city computers. I love this. "I absolutely do know. I just can't comment on that right now," the man said. The piece from Engadget on the issue says the hackers are reportedly, I said it was laughably small, by the way. I mean, for me, this would be a lot of money, but for Baltimore, well, I don't know. The hackers are reportedly holding the city's files hostage, demanding up to 13 bitcoins, which is about $76,000, to free the city's systems. Again, a lot of money for an individual, an interesting amount of money to demand of a city. As of this afternoon, the city has quarantined the ransomware, the Baltimore Sun reports, but in a press conference, the city said it's not sure when all of the systems will be functioning again. Too young to fall in love and way too young to date. We'll hit an ugly App Store story in a moment, but first a word about MacScan 3 from SecureMac. A lot of people switch to the Mac because Macs are immune to malware. Except, of course, they're not. Maybe you've skated by for years hoping to not get infected, but here's the thing. The ice is getting thin. Don't risk it. Go safely with MacScan 3 by SecureMac. MacScan 3 is a great defense against malicious software aimed at your Mac. It's developed by SecureMac, trusted names in computer security, and developers of exceptional security software for the Mac for well over a decade. MacScan 3 detects and removes Mac malware, catches keyloggers, removes tracking cookies, and provides full-range or targeted scanning, all without crowding up your hard drive or slowing down your machine. Protect your digital life. Sign up for a free 30-day trial today at securemac.com/MacScan. That's MacScan 3 by SecureMac. Your 30-day free trial is waiting at securemac.com/MacScan. We'll end the day by revisiting an old idea, one that, well, we've talked about it before. Maybe Apple might want to pay a bit more attention to the app approval process. According to a piece from Apple Insider, Apple and Google recently removed 3 dating apps from their respective app stores after the U.S. Federal Trade Commission discovered children under the age of 13 were able to sign up and use the services. The apps were pulled from both the App Store and Google Play Store following a warning letter the FTC sent to Ukraine-based developer Wildeck. The company, which created and maintained dating apps Meet24, FastMeet, and Meet4You, was notified of potential violations of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA, and the FTC Act's prohibition against unfair practices, according to an FTC press release. COPPA requires companies to clearly state privacy policies and obtain consent from parents before collecting data from users under 13 years old, stipulations to which Wildeck did not adhere. In its letter, the FTC said the company was obligated to meet COPPA requirements as it appeared to be aware that children under 13 were using its apps. Though privacy policies found in each of the 3 Wildeck apps claim to prohibit users under 13, FTC staff found users who indicated that they were as young as 12, the FTC said. In addition to communicating with adult users, children using the app were subject to Wildeck's data collection program, which harvested sensitive information, including birth dates, email addresses, photos, and real-time location data. I'm kind of ooked, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to fix this. You and me, August. Are you ready to do it?
I'll put on my cape if you do.
First, we're going to fix it on the consumer side, then we're going to fix it on the Apple side. Apple's not going to like our fix, but that's going to be fine. Would parental controls have helped in this situation? Starting on the consumer side, would parental controls have done the trick?
Absolutely. I think one of the big things we have to remember is we have to look after our kids ourselves. We can't allow large companies to do it for us because they're not going to do as good a job. On iOS devices, parental controls are located in the screen time setting, and you can do all kinds of things there to prevent kids from doing things you don't want them to do. So, yes, parental controls, please.
Yeah, because maybe your concern is money or maybe it's something else. Like I have a friend who is, constantly getting notifications on her phone that her kids are trying to download something. And every single time they do, she has to approve or deny the download. Now, I don't know if she did that originally because she didn't want her kids downloading a $10 app or a $5 app, or if she did it because she wanted to know what was happening on their phone. But here's the thing, she kills 2 birds with that one stone. So whether you're doing it, to make sure that you know how much is being spent or because you want to know what your kids are up to, this might have solved this problem.
Oh, definitely. And that's one of the fantastic features of parental controls. The amount of things that you can prevent kids from doing is amazing. And kids at different ages should be able to do different things.
Now, fixing it on the Apple side is going to be a bit more difficult. I kind of don't think so because they are the richest company on the planet and they could hire a guy or two. Is there any reason for apps with names like Meet24, FastMeet, and Meet4You to even allow 13-year-olds? I know the problem as far as the FTC is concerned is that some 12-year-olds who are on the dating scene. But shouldn't Apple's App Store maybe, kick that up a bit?
Well, there's money to be had. You'll always have certain people making the wrong choice. And obviously, this company, which isn't in the United States, made the wrong choice. Kids are dating much younger these days, but I really don't think that we should make it as easy as swipe right.
Yeah, I understand kids are dating, but we don't usually say, so have you met this 35-year-old?
Right. Right. Exactly.
We've said before, that all the app review process is looking to do is make sure that the app in question doesn't crash your phone. I hate this phrase, but for the sake of the children, aren't there some app store categories? I'm going to name a few. I'm going to say education. I'm going to say kids. I'm going to say social networking as 3 examples. Aren't there some app store categories that should demand more than just a stability check?
Well, I do think this is one of those cases where you can't foresee everything. And Apple probably didn't see this coming, but they do care about kids, obviously, with the powerful tools with parental controls. That said, because the FTC is involved and because Apple's already yanked those apps, I'm sure they're reviewing the rules and changing the system for the better.
The piece says a fourth Wildeck app, by the way, Love Feed, is still available in the App Store. Plastered, though, I am glad to say, with a 17 plus rating. So, as long as you've got parental controls turned on and your 12-year-old can't do the math to figure out how old they should be to be 17, well, hopefully, at least in that case, it'll be okay. Hey, if you're looking for more security news and how-tos, you know where to look, don't you? SecureMac.com/checklist. There you'll find notes for this show, for the last show we did, for the next show we're going to do, once it's actually the last show that we did. SecureMac.com/checklist. If you have a question you'd like to ask or a topic you would like to hear us hit, our email address is checklist@securemac.com. The address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, please do remember this. You're listening to The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. And we'll talk to you next week.